The 8-Foot Woman. The village of Tsukimura lay hidden at the edge of the eastern mountains, a place untouched by time, forgotten by maps, and shunned by travelers who valued their souls. It was a quiet settlement of narrow lanes, crooked wooden houses, and rice paddies that glistened under the dim glow of paper lanterns. The villagers lived in uneasy peace with the mist that blanketed their world every autumn, for they knew that when the fog came down from the mountain and swallowed the valley, something walked within it. They called her Hachihon no Onna, the 8-Foot Woman, a spirit older than the shrines, older than the stones that paved their paths. No one agreed on how she came to be. Some said she was once a beautiful woman, betrayed by her husband, dismembered by her jealous family, and buried beneath the cedar trees, her grief and rage transforming her into a yokai of vengeance. Others whispered she was a forgotten deity of the forest, twisted by centuries of neglect into a demon that fed on fear. But all agreed on one truth. When she appeared, someone always vanished. For decades, the villagers spoke her name only in daylight, never after sundown, and on nights when the fog crept down like a living shroud, they locked their doors, covered their mirrors, and prayed until dawn. One autumn evening, when the air hung heavy with rain and the scent of damp leaves, a young man named Takashi Ito arrived from Kyoto. He was a student of folklore, eager to collect ancient stories from the countryside for his thesis. The villagers met him with forced smiles and wary eyes. The innkeeper, an old woman named Hanai, tried to warn him gently. "You came in the wrong season," she said as she served him tea. "When the fog comes, she wakes. Do not wander at night. Do not speak her name." Takashi smiled politely, certain it was only superstition, and assured her he meant no disrespect. That night, Tsukimura was celebrating its old harvest festival, though it no longer felt like celebration. The drums beat slow and low, and the paper lanterns hanging from the gates swayed weakly in the cold wind. The villagers danced around the bonfire, offering rice and incense to unseen spirits, their faces pale and fearful beneath the flickering light. Takashi wandered among them with his notebook, jotting down details, amused by their rituals. Yet he noticed something strange. No one looked toward the mountain, no one stepped beyond the ring of lanterns, and every time the fog thickened, their chants grew louder, as if trying to drown something out. When the final drumbeat faded and the fire died, the villagers scattered into their homes like frightened birds. The square emptied in seconds, leaving only Takashi standing alone in the swirling gray. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the crickets had gone quiet. He turned toward the path leading back to the inn, the fog thickening around his legs, curling up his chest like cold fingers. The air smelled wrong, not like earth or rain, but like metal and decay, like something ancient exhaling through the mist. His footsteps echoed unnaturally, too loud, too deliberate. Then, somewhere behind him, came another sound, soft, heavy, rhythmic, thud, thud, thud. He froze, listening, but the fog muffled everything. "Probably an echo," he whispered, forcing a laugh, though his pulse raced. He kept walking faster, but the sound followed, matching his steps exactly. The streets twisted and seemed unfamiliar now. The village that had been quaint by day now looked skeletal, half-eaten by fog. He reached a corner where the lantern light flickered weakly, its flame sputtering as though suffocated, and then he heard it, a rustling above him, like fabric brushing against wood. Slowly, he lifted his gaze. There, half hidden by the mist, a shape loomed, tall, impossibly tall, a pale silhouette bending under the eaves of the roof. Its shadow stretched across the wall, long and distorted. Then, as the lantern light steadied, he saw her. She stood 8 feet tall, her form so thin and elongated it seemed carved from shadow. Her skin glowed faintly in the dim light, ghostly white with dark veins crawling beneath the surface like cracks in porcelain. Her hair was black and endless, floating as if underwater, coiling around her shoulders and down her back. Her head tilted slowly, too slowly, her neck creaking like breaking wood. When her face came into view, Takashi's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes were black voids, endless and consuming, reflecting no light, no life. Her mouth stretched wide, too wide, tearing across her cheeks in a monstrous grin filled with jagged, uneven teeth. Her arms hung at her sides, too long, fingers brushing the ground, joints bending at impossible angles. The fog around her seemed alive, curling and shifting as if obeying her will. Takashi stumbled backward, his body frozen with terror. He tried to scream, but his voice died before it reached his lips. Her eyes locked onto his, and in that instant, something cold pierced his mind. Not sound, not speech, but a thought whispered from within. "Why do you wander alone when the night belongs to me?" The fog tightened around his body like invisible chains, his breath growing shallow. Faces began to form in the mist, human faces, distorted and screaming silently, their eyes wide in agony. They pressed against him, melting into the air, vanishing again, as quickly as they appeared. Her voice came again, echoing inside his skull. "They walked alone, just like you." Takashi stumbled backward, desperate to run, but the street seemed to stretch endlessly behind him, each step slower than the last, as if time itself had thickened. The air froze in his lungs. The 8-foot woman glided closer, her feet never touching the ground, her limbs moving like the legs of a spider, smooth and silent. When her hand reached for him, the air itself seemed to groan. Her long, spindly fingers brushed his cheek, and the touch burned with a cold that cut deeper than pain. Visions flooded his mind, endless forests swallowed by fog, screams muffled in darkness, pale faces half buried in the soil. He saw himself standing among them, his eyes hollow, his mouth open in a scream he couldn't hear. Her voice slithered through the visions. "The night is mine, and now, so are you." Then, silence. At dawn, Takashi was gone. The villagers found only his notebook lying near the bridge, the pages soaked through but still legible. The last sentence read, trembling across the page, "If she looks at you, you become her shadow." Near it, the earth was indented by a single, enormous footprint, 8 feet long, leading toward the forest. In the days that followed, the fog never lifted. Children began to wake screaming, saying they saw a woman's face watching them from the corners of their rooms. A merchant traveling through Tsukimura reported hearing footsteps behind him, heavy and deliberate, though the path was empty. He swore he felt icy fingers brush against his neck, and a whisper crawl into his ear. "I see you. I am watching." He fled and never returned. Then, one morning, a young boy named Kenji vanished while chasing a stray dog near the shrine. His friends heard him scream once, then silence. Only one deep footprint was found pressed into the soil, pointing toward the woods. As months passed, more disappeared. Travelers, farmers, even a monk who came to banish her spirit. Some said the fog swallowed them whole. Others believed she took them, turning them into her servants. And sometimes, on nights when the mist grew too thick to breathe, people swore they saw figures moving within it, tall shadows with faces that weren't quite human, their eyes black voids, their movements slow and jerky. They walked the paths of Tsukimura long after the living had gone inside, their whispers carrying through the fog like a lullaby for the damned. The villagers began sealing their windows, burning incense through the night, hanging talismans above every door. Still, the footsteps came. Still, the lanterns flickered out one by one. Now, every year, when the fog season returns and the air turns cold, the elders gather in the square and light 8 lanterns. Each flame represents a soul lost to her. They bow their heads and chant the same warning their ancestors spoke generations ago. "Do not walk alone. Do not look into the fog. Do not speak her name after dark. For even now, they say, she walks the boundary between shadow and light, watching from the mist, waiting for the next lonely traveler to wander too far." Some claim to have seen her at the edge of the rice fields, standing motionless as dawn breaks, her black eyes fixed on the village. Others hear her footsteps behind them when they return home late at night, slow, steady, never rushing, as if she enjoys the fear building in her prey. And when the wind wails through the streets, carrying faint echoes of laughter that isn't quite human, the villagers close their eyes and pray that she passes them by. Because Hachihon no Onna never sleeps. She never forgets. She never forgives. Her hunger is eternal, and her presence is the weight behind every shadow that moves when it shouldn't. They say if you ever feel a sudden chill while walking through fog, if your breath turns to frost and you sense someone towering behind you, it is already too late. She has chosen you, and when the lanterns flicker and the light dies completely, you will see her, 8 feet tall, her face smiling that jagged, endless smile, her eyes wide and empty, reflecting your last terrified look. And in that moment, before the world fades to gray, you will understand why no one ever returns from Tsukimura after dark. The fog will close around you, silent and suffocating, and the 8-foot woman will claim another soul for her endless night.